Hey guys, it's Corrin with Thompson RV in Pendleton, Oregon. Today I have a special guest on this video. This is Tom from MYT Solar out of Central Oregon. So Tom, for those of you who haven't been watching our channel for a few years, let's hear about your business.
Yeah, so we basically specialize in upgrading outdoors RVs. We put large battery systems in them, make them a little more capable for off-grid camping.
Sure, okay. So we have done a video in the past. It's been a few years now. So we will link that down below. That way you can kind of get more of a backstory on how we met and how we kind of did this partnership. But enough has changed over the last few years that we felt like it was time to do an upgraded video.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
12-volt fridges coming in the outdoors RVs now. That's a difference. More solar coming from the factory.
Yeah, different solar.
Yeah, and just people have different needs. So this video, what we really want to do is educate people on what solar is, how many batteries, different, not everybody has the same needs.
Yep.
So why a person might want a generator model, why a person might want an MYT Solar inverter battery install, all of those things. So we're going to kind of give you a rundown on all of those things. And then behind us, we have an amazing solar install that Tom and Ellie did. And so Tom is going to kind of give me the rundown on everything they did in this unit.
Yep.
So for those people maybe watching this video that have no concept of 12-volt power, 110 power in an RV,
Yep.
let's maybe start there with what runs off of each.
Yeah, so the 12-volt items are going to be kind of a lot of your critical items. So lighting, your furnace, your water heater, kind of both. It needs 12 volt to use the propane to heat it. The 12 volt fridges now, obviously. What else?
But like if you were camping in the mountains, basically the 12 volt is going to keep you alive.
Yeah, it's got all those
necessity.
fundamental things. It runs the water pump so you can
Right.
get water. It runs the heat so you can stay warm. It runs the lighting.
Right.
Those kind
Even
of
the
things.
TV
Even
in
the
an
TV.
outdoors RVs. Yeah.
Yep.
And then often things also run propane and 12 volt.
Correct, yeah.
But then your 110 is kind of a little bit more of your, you maybe wouldn't die without them. You don't need them.
Yeah, they're
but
certainly your luxury items that are usually reserved for when you're plugged into power.
Yes.
So when you're plugged into power, things like all the outlets, the air conditioner,
right.
a lot of
Microwave.
those microwave.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So a person could, back in the day when people were camping in the 70s, 80s, 90s, whatever, they could take a trailer with a couple of batteries, go to the mountains, and they could get by just fine on 12 volt and propane.
Exactly.
Right.
Yep.
Right. But what we've seen is there's more 12 volt draw now,
Yep.
especially with
the
fridge. Yep. Just even more bells and whistles than
Yeah.
there used to
Oh,
be.
definitely.
Yeah. Because I mean, back then, geez, some trailers didn't even used to come with air conditioning.
Yeah.
They
Yep.
didn't come with air conditioning or things like that. Microwaves weren't a thing. So now that we've gotten more 110 and more 12 volt, so where does solar kind of play a part in that?
Yeah, so solar basically is just responsible ultimately just for charging the batteries. If you think about it just in its purest form, solar is just charging your batteries. And
Okay.
so what those batteries do for the RV and what those batteries run is that's the batteries, but it's very important that solar is sufficiently charging those batteries.
Yes. Yes. Even for situations like storing a trailer, it just keeps those batteries charged. So then when you go to get your trailer out of storage and you want to take it camping.
Yeah.
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 So I feel like when we first started seeing solar, 15, 20 years ago, it was mainly just to kind of keep the batteries charged and whatnot.
Yeah, they used to come with little small 50-watt
Exactly.
more battery tenders than
Right.
full-blown chargers.
Right. If you couldn't keep your trailer plugged in and charging, then you would have solar.
Yep.
Yeah. But now solar has come a long ways, and so have batteries.
Yeah.
So
Definitely.
batteries have a lot more storage.
Yep.
So now we can operate a lot more off of those.
Definitely, yeah.
Right.
Yep. And if we're going to be running more things off the batteries, then of course, yes, we want more solar, and that's what Outdoors
Sure.
RV has done a great job of is implementing more solar
Right.
for their rigs.
Right. For most people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
But then when people want to do even more, that's where you come in.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, we I guess we take it a little bit further and we say, okay, well, what if we put more battery in? What if we put more solar in? Then what is the rig capable of when we're not plugged in?
Right, exactly. Because we are getting a lot more people that want to boondock
Yeah.
exclusively.
Yeah, a lot of
Like-
people living and working on the road
Right.
now, and they want their Starlink running, and they want some of those comforts.
Yes.
They're not necessarily camping as much anymore.
Right.
They're out doing it full
Right.
time.
Correct. Yeah, they might be working off grid and all of those things, and they want to have all the luxuries of home completely off of solar.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now for the average person, maybe not even the average person, but for some people, they just are going to go to a park.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
minimum solar from Outdoors RV is 400 watts.
Yep.
So 400 watts and maybe a single lithium battery. That way, if they did get caught somewhere where they didn't have a camp spot for the night,
Yep.
they're fine.
Yeah, and not even that. I mean, even with that solar, you need a battery. Even if you're plugged in, you still
Right.
need a battery. It's there.
Right.
It's there to kind of help, even when you are plugged in. So, yeah. I mean, and the thing is that just because you plan to be somewhere with power,
Right.
sometimes the park power goes out.
Right.
Sometimes you get to a park late at night and they don't have any spots.
Right.
And you have to run the trailer without power, without plug-in power.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So-
Or I've even had people that have lived in states where they have rolling blackouts.
Yep.
And they're like, you know what? I want to be able to have my trailer next to my house
Yes.
and have all 3 batteries. So even though they might be camping somewhere with power most of the time, they
Yep.
still go with our max package, which is 3 batteries on the
Yep.
front.
Yep.
But even our max package is going to have some limitations when a person gets into the middle of nowhere and wants to run their air conditioning,
Yeah.
because that's 110 power.
Yeah. So that's when you'd need the inverter for that. Yep.
Right. Now, one question I get a lot from people is, there are companies out there, these sort of off-brand, big companies out there that are putting inverters in their trailers.
Yep.
And people always ask me, why does an Outdoors RV put inverters in their trailers?
Yep.
Well, there's a lot of reasons, but can you go into some sort of detail as far as, like, I know you've seen not just, you specialize in Outdoors RV, but you've seen everything
seen
as an
full
RV
depth,
inspector.
Definitely. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So kind of go into detail for people why sometimes getting an inverter from the factory is not really the best idea.
Yeah, well, I think one of the things is that a lot of people don't understand is the inverter it's gonna give you 120 volt power. You have an inverter, an outlet's gonna work, but that's just because it works doesn't mean that you can just run it forever.
Right.
A lot of people, they'll have an inverter in their RV and they'll only have 2 batteries sitting up on the tongue, and they're running their microwave, and 10 minutes later their batteries are all gone and they're out of
Completely
power.
dead.
So
Exactly.
I think with an inverter and with that ability to run some of those bigger appliances like the air conditioner or the microwave, you really have to have the battery power
Yeah.
and the solar to support that. And not everybody needs that.
Right.
We talked about 12 volt versus 120. The 12 volt is going to get all your fundamental needs.
Right.
So if you want the 120 or as a luxury,
Right.
then sure, but you're going to need a lot of battery and a lot of solar to
Right.
support that.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And another thing too is, when a system comes from the factory, Outdoors RV has already mentioned to me that the reason they're not going to do that, at least not anytime in the near future, is because if one person wants a 400 watt inverter, one person wants a 1500 watt,
Yeah.
one person doesn't want one at all.
Yeah.
They just don't feel like it's a great idea to put one in from the factory.
Yeah.
It makes way more sense to get a trailer. And then, anybody that wants to do something like that,
Yeah.
it makes way more sense to me to go to a professional.
I would agree. And I would say, even like to go a step further, there is absolutely an electrical system for everybody.
Right.
And I think that's the thing, that a one size fits all is just not the
Right.
case. People travel in so many different ways. And, that's what I like, that you guys kind of have a say in the batteries. The batteries don't come from the factory.
Right.
Because again, that we don't really want that one size fits all for everybody's power. And I think, for some people, it may be 1 lithium battery,
Yeah.
2 lithium batteries,
Right.
and just this kind of standard 400 watts of solar could be perfect.
Sure.
We took
Sure.
our 19 MKS out a few weekends ago. We had 1 battery on the tongue
Mhm.
and 600 watts on the roof. And for a couple of nights, it was fine.
Sure.
And it worked well for us. If we were going to go for 5 nights,
Right.
we'd need a completely different power system.
Right.
So
Right.
I just think it's all it needs to be kind of tailored. And that's why speaking to you
Absolutely.
guys and finding out what kind of system people need,
Mhm.
and getting a little educated on the topic.
Yes.
Before saying, I want a 3,000 watt inverter,
Right.
I need 2,500 watts.
Right.
It's just
Right.
learn a fair bit.
Yes, absolutely. I've had people that have wanted to get a huge inverter system, and then when I break it down for them, it was really just to run a Keurig,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And it's like, okay, that's maybe not the best way to do it. You
Yeah.
can, there's lots of ways to make coffee off grid, as
Definitely.
great ways to make coffee.
Yeah.
But if there's somebody that I know in the last video that we shot, Ellie had the great idea that, a lot of our customers travel with pets.
Yeah.
And if you want to be in a Safeway parking lot and
Yeah.
it's 110 degrees
Yeah.
and you're concerned about your pet's well-being,
Yeah.
you can turn on the air conditioner
Yeah.
and have it running off of batteries and solar
Yep.
and while you're grocery shopping.
Yeah.
I mean, that's amazing.
Yep.
That's really amazing. And that's
Yep.
not something that is really, that's not something that's coming standard
No,
on units.
that's pretty special, and that's kind of a significant, that's kind of, a lot of people are coming to us for that.
Sure.
And it's, as well as just having a lot of power and feeling comfortable and like managing their power, running the air conditioning for their dogs is
Yes.
honestly a pretty big one, even if
I
it's
can see
just
that.
for a few hours while they have to go grocery shopping or something like that.
Right.
It's so, but yeah, that's, some people don't have dogs. So
Right.
again, there's a power
Right.
system
Exactly.
for everybody.
Exactly. Yep. Absolutely. Well, I think that was a really good kind of recap about, how everything works.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's, again, that was why we partnered with you a few years back, was we specialize in outdoors RV. They're the best off-grid, off-road vehicle. You've owned two now.
I've owned two.
Yes, you know that. Yeah.
I wouldn't own anything else. Yeah.
And as an RV inspector, like you saw
Saw
the
everything.
gamut.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, we specialize in that, but we don't want to specialize in inverters.
Yeah.
We want, like, that's what you geek out on, for lack of
Yeah.
a better
Oh, yeah.
term.
Yeah.
We want you, like, if that's what they want, we want to send people the correct person
For
for
sure.
that.
Yeah.
And to me, that coming from the factory, again, it's not tailored
No,
to
yeah.
anybody.
Yeah.
It's not.
It's again, yeah, you could put a really big system in the trailer.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't think we do the same. Like, we generally do about a system a week.
Right.
And I don't think there's a week goes by that someone is getting the exact same system.
Right.
It's they want a little more solar or a little less battery
Yes.
or a different
Mhm.
brand of batteries. And so working with the customer on their power, I think, is just one of the most fundamental things.
Sure.
And I think there is a baseline. So I
Right.
think there is kind of what a trailer should come with for everybody.
Absolutely.
And to
Yeah.
me, that is probably 2 lithium batteries.
Yep.
A smart shunt so that you can actually
Yes.
see the percentage of those batteries,
100%.
and 400 to 600 watts on the roof.
Yeah.
And I think that's a baseline.
Right.
But I think it just, then it starts to get a little varied as you go up.
And I couldn't agree more. So we typically order ours in with 600 watts or even 1,000,
Yeah.
depending on, when people are camping. So what I always tell people is 600 watts is really great in sunny weather.
Yeah.
Right. But once you start getting into low daylight hours,
Yeah.
would you agree with that? That then you're
Yeah.
going to capture a little bit
Definitely.
more?
Yeah. We typically see probably, it ranges, but in the winter months, we might only see 50% of what's
Right.
on the roof. So if we can do 50% of 1,000 watts,
Mhm.
that's 500 watts.
Right.
At least year round, and
Yeah.
even more in the summertime.
Right.
So I think, having plenty of solar, I mean, you'll see when we get on the roof.
Yeah.
It's kind of, I don't think you can have too much, but I did also say there's the right amount of solar for everybody.
right.
And that's, and I do believe in that. It's just,
Absolutely.
you'll never have too much. So
Right.
Let me say it that way.
Right.
You know?
Even like 1,000 watts for somebody who's never going to go camping in the winter.
Yeah.
That's overkill.
Oh, absolutely.
completely
Yeah.
overkill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And especially without the inverter. But
Right.
but for that person
Right.
with 1,000 watts, their batteries will always be full.
Yes.
It's actually better for the batteries.
Sure.
That's the other side of it, is if you're going to spend a couple of $1,000s on some really nice lithium
Mm-hmm.
batteries, well, you should have plenty of solar so that you can keep those batteries
Oh, that's good. to know.
well looked after. Obviously, lithium can handle, being drained and not
Right.
being full all the time. But the best thing you can do for a battery is give it plenty of juice.
Sure.
So,
Sure. I know Battleborn recommends per 100 amp hour battery, 200 watt panel.
Yeah.
So typically our system here is going to be, 600 watts of solar and then
Yeah.
3 lithium
Yeah.
batteries.
Yep.
Yeah. But again, that's not going to run your air conditioner. That's not going to run your microwave. It's not going to run your 110 outlets.
Yeah.
So for people who, we do have the backcountry series and the mountain trek series that do come with an onboard generator.
Yep.
So you can push a button and you can start your generator, and that's great for a lot of people too.
Yeah.
But not everyone.
Not everybody.
I mean, some people
Yeah.
don't want to have any kind of generator,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or they're planning to travel in ways that they can't have it. If it's
Exactly.
doing a harvest host where they,
Oh, true.
get into a quiet winery and
Right.
it's just not allowed.
Sure.
So-
Oh, I never even thought about that. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, perfect. Okay, well, let's maybe take a look at the system that you did, because I think we've pretty much covered everything as far as 12 volts
I
and
think so,
solar.
yeah, and we can
Yeah,
touch on it a little more inside.
absolutely. I'm kind of excited to see this one
Yeah,
because
it's a good one.
yeah, right on. So this is a Timber Ridge 25 RDS. We are currently under the bed in the front bedroom. That's where most of your installs go, correct?
Yeah. Typically, we've got to put all the components somewhere, and bringing it all inside, it's kind of the best spot for
Yeah,
it.
and you guys do beautiful work.
Thank
I
you.
mean, I always hear comments about how amazing your work is and how clean it is. You even take the drawers that are under the bed and you put the drawer faces back on, so
Yeah.
it looks very nice.
Yeah,
when
if
you
you
come to the
didn't
bedroom.
if you didn't lift the bed up, you
wouldn't know it was here.
wouldn't know it was here. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Now there's a few models, and you have a lot of YouTube videos on your YouTube channel, which I'll link down below.
Yep.
The 19 MKS, I
Yep.
think the 280 KVS. Some of those
Yeah,
have
a little different.
different
Yeah.
configurations, but
Yep.
anything with a north-south bed
Yep.
is basically going to have this.
Yeah, definitely.
So tell me about this system.
Yeah, so just kind of an overview of everything here, kind of connecting to back to what we talked about outside. So we've got our battery bank here, just like you might have a battery bank on the tongue.
Sure.
These are lithium batteries, obviously, and there's a lot of capacity to them. But these batteries are basically going to run all the 12-volt DC stuff in the RV, everything, slide outs, levelers, lights, water pump, all those things that
Sure.
we talked about, outside of those more luxury items that we talked
Right,
about, like
right.
the outlets, the air conditioner, the microwave, things like that. So that's the batteries. And as we talked about up on the roof is the solar that is responsible for replenishing these batteries. And that's really the only connection between the solar and the batteries.
Right.
The solar isn't running any of this stuff.
Sure.
The batteries are, but it's the solar that kind of recharges the battery bank.
Sure. Yeah. So without batteries, solar is just kind of there.
Yeah, it's just there, and that's why you've got to have the right size battery bank. And
Yes,
again,
for
that's where that
storage, yeah.
kind of tailoring specifically for someone, someone might say, oh, I want 1,000 amp hours of battery, but they only have 400 watts of solar. Well, that's where that tailoring piece comes.
Right,
Those two
right.
things have to be somewhat aligned, because if you've got a huge battery bank, but you're only putting a little back into it every day, you don't really need,
Sure.
You should be focusing on more solar, less battery. There's that kind of playing around with those two things.
Right. And the business being mainly just you and Ellie. I
Yep.
know Jake.
Yeah,
Jake helps you with
we
installs.
have a technician, yep.
Right, exactly. But with just the two of you, you're doing all the installs, and then you also spend a lot of time with people figuring out what system they do need.
Definitely, yeah. I would say every week I'm speaking to a lot of people
Right.
and just kind of figuring out what their power needs are, and sometimes we have a solution for that, and sometimes I'm suggesting just maybe max out the factory,
Sure.
and get 3 or 4 lithium on the tongue, and you probably will do
Right.
99% of what you want it to do.
Right. Right.
And then there's a few customers that maybe thought that's what they needed, and then realize how nice it could be if
Sure,
they have some of this
exactly.
extra stuff in here.
Yes. It
But
definitely
yeah,
makes life simple.
definitely, yeah.
Right.
I mean, we had a big system in our 260 KVS, and we're currently putting one in our 19 MKS, and I sometimes forget how nice it is to have this,
Right.
because I've always had it in my
Yeah.
rigs. I've always done some
I would
sort
hope
of
so.
some sort of upgrade. Yeah. But yeah, the touch panel is honestly one of the greatest things I like as well, is just knowing exactly where the power is.
Right.
But yeah, so if the batteries are going to run the 12 volt, the DC stuff, there's a few extra components in here, obviously.
Right.
That's where the inverter really comes into play.
Sure.
So we have a lot of solar on the roof. On this one, we have 2,500 watts, and we have a big battery bank, basically 800 amp hours
Okay.
worth of battery.
Right.
So with that, we can introduce a big, powerful inverter. And so this inverter is going to take that battery power, which typically would only be running the lights, the furnace, all those
Right.
things we mentioned, and now change that into 120 so we can run the air conditioner. And we're
Sure.
doing that right actually as we speak.
Yes.
We're generating
very nice.
enough solar to keep the batteries charged up and running the air conditioner
Right.
in this rig. So
Right. Yeah, an inverter, so people always ask me, you know, every trailer comes with a converter,
Yeah.
right?
Yes,
One
yeah.
10 to 12 volt. That's
Yeah.
when you plug in, it converts the power
Yeah.
to 12 volt to
Yeah.
make the trailer operate. But this is doing the opposite. It's inverting. So it's solar power to battery, 12 volt, inverting it to 110.
Correct. Yeah, empowering all the outlets
Yeah.
and empowering the breaker panel basically.
Right,
So,
right.
but yeah, in here there's a few other components that kind of make it all work. This is all Victron equipment, which is kind of the higher end, and it's what we pretty much exclusively use.
Sure.
Just-
You have other offerings, but this is kind of,
Yeah,
when
for
you're
batteries,
going this big,
mostly
it's kind
for
of the thing.
batteries.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so. Like we always play around with the batteries, and sometimes customers come to us, and they've already got some lithium batteries
Sure.
that are only a few years old, and we can
Right.
reuse those and play around with some different brands of batteries for the inverter and the solar charge controllers and
Right.
the touch panel and all that stuff. We keep that stuff.
Right.
Victron.
And ideally, to do it right,
Yeah,
you do want to go with good quality components. at
most
this point.
definitely. Yeah, I mean it's a pricey upgrade, but
Yeah.
the other thing is that when you're out camping, you're reliant on it.
Right.
You know, you don't want. We're trying to reduce power anxiety, so I think just using a tried and tested product
Absolutely.
is really important. And this is getting a little more detail, but one of the nice things, as I kind of mentioned about the Victron equipment, is the monitoring.
Oh,
And so knowing what every little piece of your system is doing, how much you have left, are the batteries charging, are they discharging, what's the inverter
Right.
doing, seeing all that on the central location of the screen is really
Right.
huge.
Right.
But the other thing that it has, which is nice for us as installers, but also nice for the customer, is the Wi-Fi feature. And so
Oh.
it's not necessary, but if someone has a Starlink or happens to have some Wi-Fi, a WeBoost or some sort of Wi-Fi in
Sure.
their rig, they can connect their system to Wi-Fi, and then I can log on and
Oh, that's cool.
see what's going on. If they have a power issue, I can see the log of what might have happened
Sure.
and just kind of look after their system that way
That
for
is
them.
super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So what are some of these other components?
Yeah, so we have 2,500 watts of solar on the roof, and that solar, it is DC power, so kind of like the batteries, it's DC power, but we wouldn't want that solar to directly tie into the batteries without another device.
Oh, okay.
Because that coming down to this particular trailer is probably maybe 100 volts of DC power.
Gotcha.
When we think 100 volts, we think 120 volt, but it's 100 volts of DC power.
Okay.
So it's the right kind of power, but it's the voltage is too high.
Sure.
So it wouldn't be great for the batteries. So these devices here, we've got a smaller one and a bigger one. These are the solar charge controllers. I think of them like a kind of like a propane regulator.
Okay.
They regulate the voltage that's coming in
Okay.
and make it the right voltage for the batteries.
Sure.
And so they're charging the batteries in doing that.
Okay.
This customer has a big one for all the solar that's on the roof, and a smaller one for an external solar panel.
Oh, okay. All right.
And then, yeah, the other devices in here, this system's a little more, not necessarily more complicated, but it has another element, and that is that the batteries are actually 24-volt batteries.
Okay.
And so there's a device over here which just kind of like the solar regulator, it's regulating the voltage to send it to the RV to
Okay.
make sure everything's running on the 12 volt that it
Sure.
typically does.
Sure.
The little device over here is the Servo GX. That's what gives us the touch screen.
Okay.
Kind of ties all of the devices together
Sure.
and
Okay.
makes the system function.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Perfect. So, do you want to show me the servo?
This-
love
yeah,
to
let's
see
go.
that.
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
check it out.
So, this is the Victron servo.
Yeah, this is the touch panel that's showing all that information from all the devices down the bed.
Okay, cool.
What's great is it's everything all at once. It's what is our battery doing? What percentage is it at? How much is coming in or out of it? We talked about our 12 volt and our 120 volt stuff in the RV. It's showing us 120 volt. This is how much 120 volt stuff we're running right now.
With running the air conditioner
With the air
currently.
conditioner,
Okay.
yeah, that's pretty much the 120 device that's running right
Yeah.
now. Here's our DC, our 12 volt stuff that we're running right now.
Okay.
So really it's just the LEDs.
Sure.
And some stuff under the bed. The fridge may even be on.
Mm-hmm.
And then here is letting us know, okay, if this is what we're using, 12 volt, 120, what
Mm-hmm.
are we actually bringing into the RV? How are we, if the battery is responsible for all of this power, what from the solar is coming in and charging it right now?
Okay.
And what's awesome with all that solar on the roof right now is that we're getting 1,600 watts. We said there's 2,500 watts on the roof. It's not the perfect day outside.
Right.
But our air conditioner is only drawing 1,300. So
Yeah.
right now we're able to run the air conditioner, no
Sure.
generator, from the sun that's readily available.
Right,
We've been
right.
out here running this air conditioner for 3 hours, I think, and
Yeah.
we've gone down a little bit. We were
Right,
at
but not
96%, and now we're down at 95.
Right.
So that's nice.
Right.
Obviously only can get that much solar with a certain size floor plan.
True. Yeah. Yeah, you're not going to get that on a 19.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, not yet anyway.
Right, right.
But yeah, so this is obviously a bigger system. What else?
And then I remember one time on the last video, you told me like if you were at a harvest host and you were plugged in, but maybe you could only plug into a small extension cord.
Yeah.
It's gonna give you, like, it'll show
really
you.
Nice feature that this has. You know, typically with that inverter, it's the batteries that are creating the 120 to run the air conditioner. But what if you had some 120 volt
Right.
available, but not a 30 amp?
Right.
You know, you were plugged at a friend's house, maybe with an extension cord.
Right.
Or at a harvest host that had 15 amp service
Right.
available. What's great is that you can tell the system, tell the servo basically how much plug-in power you do have, and then it will use all of that. But then it will also, if you try to run a little bit more than what's typically available, it will use the batteries to support
Sure.
that. So it's a really kind of neat feature where you can be plugged into a 15 amp extension cord at your
Right.
garage or at mooch docking at a friend's house,
Right.
and the rig will function like a 30 amp rig
Right. Yeah.
because of the batteries and the inverter.
Absolutely. So is there a difference when you have a 30 amp unit versus a 50 amp?
A little bit in mostly just the device that we use. The inverter is different because
Okay.
the inverter has to allow the two 50 amp legs in
Sure.
versus just one 30 amp leg. But for the most part, it's going to function the same.
This will look pretty much the
The
same.
system, yeah, will look the same. Really, in most of our systems, the two variables, you're always going to get the touch panel.
Okay.
You're always going to get all the nice equipment. The
Yeah.
two variables really are how much battery do you need,
Right.
and how much solar do you need. Those
Okay.
are the things that change the
Right.
system. The
And so
most.
what's your biggest system so far?
Probably our 260 kVS. We had, I think we had like 26 or 2700 watts on the roof. The other thing that kind of comes into this is, okay, now we've got these batteries that can do awesome things like run the air conditioner, run the microwave, keep me at 100% and stop me from worrying about power.
Right.
How can we get more and more juice into them? And obviously we hit a limit sometimes on the roof. Like
Sure.
we want to make sure the roof is still usable, walkable, and
Right.
we'll see that upstairs when we go up to the roof.
Sure.
The air conditioner can be accessed, you know,
Right.
if things that need to get worked on,
Right.
seals need to be checked. So, you know, there's a limit there as to how much we can fit on. But then it's okay, how else can we get power into the system? That's
Right.
where an external solar port that
true.
ties into this will come in. And so we can have, you know, 400 watts chasing the sun all day. We have 1,000 watts on our truck canopy. So when we're going down the road and we have the 2,600 on the roof, we also have 1,000 watts
Oh,
from
okay.
the truck. So now it's just more creative ways of getting power into
Right.
the batteries.
Sure.
There's, you know, some options there, and charging from the truck as well. The DC to DC charger.
Sure.
Just other ways to kind of to add to the system.
Okay, cool.
Because you'll take as much as you have. You know,
Right.
it's like, oh, it's 80 degrees in the trailer. We can get by because we don't have much solar coming in. But if there's plenty coming in, it's like, well, why not?
Why not run there?
Why not be a little more comfortable?
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. Okay, cool. Yeah, so with that being said, let's maybe
Let's
jump
go
up.
check
Well,
out the
I don't think
solar.
I'm going to get on the roof, but you can show
Okay,
Casey, the
sounds good.
cameraman.
So up here on this 25 RDS, we've got 10 solar panels. These are rich solar panels. They're 250 watt solar panels. Thanks to our rails that we use, so we mount the panels a little less traditionally, I guess, than the factory might. We use these rails, which allows us to kind of move the panels around and get them into what we think are more ideal locations, giving that walking path so that the roof is still usable. Maintenance can be done. We get the panels a little flatter, which leads to a little more power. And so that power obviously is now heading straight down into that battery bank, which is really helping the system function and kind of stay as topped up as possible.
That is such an amazing system. Thank you so much for showing us all of that.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. So one thing that is different since you guys were here last is you actually bought a shop down in Central Oregon.
Yep.
So you're no longer coming to Thompson RV to do installs.
Yeah, we have a really nice space to do that now.
Mhm.
We used to do everything mobily.
Right.
So it's nice to have that space. And yeah, but luckily for the customer, you know, they still can buy from you guys and pick
Yeah.
up a rig that's kitted out like this one was.
Yeah. So we do have some people that they want to come, like this particular gentleman, he wants to show up from the East Coast and have everything done. So we shipped it to you and the customer just pays shipping to get it to you, to get it back.
Yep.
And that way, when they come to pick up, it's completely done.
It's all ready for them.
Yeah. Other people choose to pick up their trailer at Thompson RV
Yep.
and then head down to Central Oregon. But you need their trailer for 4 or 5 days?
Yeah, it's about 5 days. It's about a 5-day job.
Sure.
Yeah. So for some people, they just don't have that kind of time baked into
Exactly.
their travel plans. They may be coming from far away. And, you know, some people just like that one day where everything's all wrapped up in a bow and ready to go. So
Exactly. And on occasion, when you can, you guys actually come down here and do a walkthrough. But
whenever we can, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's obviously
But you're pretty
we
busy.
try to line our schedule up, but like we mentioned earlier, we have a technician that can kind of keep things moving
Sure.
when we're not at the shop. And so being able to come up and meet those customers is awesome because
Right.
it's such an adventure that they're going on. So it's really is nice when we get to be a part of
Well,
it.
as we've decided, we have the coolest customers.
Customers are awesome.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
But now, if for some reason, weather or something, you can't get down here, you send them detailed videos.
Yes, yes.
Right.
They always send detailed iPhone videos of each step of what we go through in the walkthrough, and those are really helpful. People actually sometimes prefer that because they can reference it.
Yes.
Yeah, and honestly, like a lot of the time when we're doing our in-person walkthrough, sometimes the customer's just on their video anyway. So it's like, but I think having those videos, they can download them offline and obviously we're just a text or a call away, but
Sure.
having something they can reference is really useful, I think. So.
And that's one thing I want to touch on is, Thompson RV being a small family owned and operated dealership, when people call here, we're here. Like we remember who you are. It's like a family.
Yeah.
And same with you guys. When people have a system done through you,
Yeah.
they know that they can contact you.
Yeah, they have our lifetime support.
Right.
Always.
Yeah.
And that's amazing,
Yeah.
especially in this day and age.
Yeah, definitely. I think I can tell that's what our customers really enjoy is that kind of a more personal, close
Sure.
kind of relationship. And it doesn't just end at when they get the rig. You
Right.
know, we love getting pictures from our customers
Exactly,
out
yes,
boondocking and
Yeah.
doing the coolest things that we wish we weren't too busy to be doing, but
Very jealous.
Yeah, all of us. Yeah, exactly. Yep. But it's such a cool industry to be in too.
yeah.
It's so much fun, except that it does create a little bit of jealousy when everybody's traveling to Alaska in the middle of summer and I really want to go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In our busy season.
Exactly. Now, where can people find your website?
Yep. So they can go to www.mytsolar.com
Mhm.
and they can fill out our inquiry form. And that means that they can talk to Tom on the phone and build a custom system.
Sure.
And that's the best way to get a hold of us.
Okay.
Um,
And you guys have a good YouTube channel too. We'll link it down below.
yeah.
So there's a lot of videos online if you want to see different floor plans in the outdoors RV models, 26 kVS, 280 kVS, 19 MKS,
Yeah.
fifth wheel.
Yeah.
We've done,
We've
a
got a
lot.
pretty good catalog there of all the different
Right.
rigs. So a lot of our customers, when they come to us, they've seen that video, and we do things differently. We're constantly evolving and changing things. But if you want to get an idea of what kind of power you could get in your specific floor plan, those
Sure.
videos are pretty good. As well as now we're doing a few more educational things as well. So
Like how much does everything weigh? That was my favorite video.
That
If
was a
you
lot of
want
fun.
The best laugh ever. Oh my gosh, the headband. The headband's what did it for me. Yeah. I am really glad too that you grew out your hair again.
oh yeah.
Because
Yeah, you'll see that you'll see some buzz cuts on the video.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for watching. And if you have any questions, I have links down below to their YouTube channel as well as their website. And let us know if you have any questions.
Yeah, thanks, Corrin.
Thanks.